Hello and welcome to today's video on RSUs, Restricted Stock Units. I'm Kaleb, the founder of 10 Talents Financial Planning, and I want to talk to you today about a special form of compensation from your employer. If you work at Google, Facebook, Amazon, Prologis, Workday, and the list goes on, Boeing, SoFi. If you work at any of these companies, you likely receive RSU compensation. You've got your salary, you got your bonus, maybe commission, and you've got RSU compensation. For many of my clients, this could be the largest part of your compensation. As we get started, I want to set the table. Think of RSU compensation as a bonus, okay? It's a cash bonus, but the form is employer stock, okay? We'll put a pin in that and come back to it, but you need to think of RSU income or compensation as bonus or a cash bonus, like a cash bonus. We'll put a pin in that and come back to that. But we're gonna talk about RSUs today, not ISOs, incentive stock options, or non-quals, NQSOs, non-qualified stock options. Non-quals and ISOs are typically issued as a company is being founded or pre-IPO. It is very rare to see non-quals or ISOs be issued after a company goes public. So if you're at a publicly traded company right now, it is most likely you have RSUs, restricted stock units, on a vesting schedule, and we're gonna talk about that today. If you do have ISOs or non-quals, that's a separate video because those are very different. More tax planning can take place with ISOs and non-quals, but that is more if you're a founder or maybe you were a very early employee, you might have those. So just to clarify, we're gonna dive in today on the tax treatment of RSUs, hopefully make this clearer, use an illustration, and go from there. So I'm gonna turn off my video, I'm gonna share my whiteboard screen, and we'll dive into this together. Just one moment here. Okay, so here we go. RSUs all ready to go here. So you're typically on a vesting schedule, so let's just call it 4 years to get 100% vested in your employer stock. So what we're going to use as an example is, let's just say on January 1 of a given year, you vest in 10 shares. These shares are valued at $1,000 per share. Okay, so the total value that we're talking about here in this example is going to be, you've probably done the easy math, keep it easy, $10,000. Now it's important to note that on the day that you vest, in this case January 1, and these 10 shares on January 1, they're worth $1,000 each. This is the value on the day they vest, not when you got hired, not any time before. This is the day that they vest. They're worth $1,000. So let's make that clear. You have $10,000 event. This is ordinary income to you. So just a minute ago, I said you need to think of this as like bonus or cash bonus. And this is one of the reasons why. This is ordinary income to you when it's received. So $10,000 will show up on your tax return. You can't do anything about this. There's not a whiz-bang strategy to tell your company, no, I don't want this. Don't tax me on this, or don't vest me in this. It's predetermined. You agreed to the RSU compensation likely in your employment agreement. In subsequent years, you're given more grants, more RSU grants. You can't get around this. So we'll start with there. Sometimes I'm asked that question, can I get out of this or can I get around it? Now, one of the problems we run into is there's not enough tax withholding. So for instance, if we switch our colors here, and we'll go to red because red is the color of taxation, typically 22% is withheld for taxes. So 20 will come down here, we'll put $2,200. That's gonna be withheld for taxes. And you say, Kaleb, how do they withhold that? Well, what they do is, see this 22% here? They're gonna go look up here and they're gonna say, oh, at $1,000 a share, that's 2.2 shares that we're going to sell. So we're gonna sell these 2.2 shares to pay your taxes. Okay, and they do this automatically. You'll see this on your pay stub. This is why I often will ask you for your pay stub, is because I need to see the share withholding. So in this very basic example, you're gonna be down to 7.8 shares remaining. So if we kind of put a line through here, you're only going to have 7.8 shares left. This is the most common. Now, you can override this. It's not very common, but you can simply by instructing the payroll company or your employer, HR, to not withhold. However, this is the most common. And we'll talk about why you might not want to withhold. However, let's just move forward. This is the most common. You withhold the shares. Now there's more that's withheld. There's Social Security, there's Medicare, there's state income taxes, and so you're gonna have less shares, but this is a federal tax example. I wanna keep things simple. So now you have 7.8 shares in this example. You likely have not withheld enough. Many of you listening to this right now are not in the 22% tax bracket. You are in fact 24%, bracket, perhaps 32, 35, or 37. Okay, 22 is one of the lowest brackets we have available. The only ones lower are 10% and 12. So if you're in any of these brackets, you may notice an interesting problem. Every year you owe a truckload of taxes. If we don't review this together, let's say you're sitting in this 32% tax bracket, if we don't withhold an extra 10% in taxes, if we don't sell an extra share, in this example, we need to sell another share, then you're gonna owe a lot of taxes, especially if you vest monthly, quarterly, and this is ongoing. You'll see this problem every year on your tax return. So I hope maybe that is kind of a light bulb moment if you do owe taxes every year. We want to get around that, or we want to get ahead of that by either selling more shares, or if you have cash on the sidelines in a savings account, checking account, we want to make estimated tax payments throughout the year. And I can help you with that. A CPA can help you with that. If your current CPA is not helping you with that, that's a problem, right? CPAs need to help with this. This is a tax issue. I'm happy to help with it, but CPAs are probably the most appropriate. So this is kind of the taxation, decision tree. Now, again, this is going to happen to you throughout the year. So as these events occur, you're typically super busy, right? You have family, you have personal interests, and you have work bearing down on you throughout the week, throughout the month. You don't have time to think about this. This is why I will ask you for a pay stub. I will run the numbers and I will run the math to say, okay, listen, you need to set aside X because, listen, I get it. You're busy. You're not thinking about, oh, I wonder how much was withheld on my pay stub. Was it enough? You're working hard. You're going through these vesting events throughout the year, and this is not necessarily the number one top of mind thing. So I get it, but I do want to get ahead of it so we don't have these massive tax bills in April, and hopefully also avoid penalties. We want to avoid penalties from under withholding throughout the year, and this is often why, is just the standard withholding right here is too low. And this is a payroll thing. Every company I mentioned earlier is going to withhold at 22%. It's a standard withholding for bonuses and RSU income. So I want to give you an illustration of what should we do at this point. So I'm going to create a fresh, here we go. Okay, look at that. So let's say in this example, we sell an extra share, and for sake of argument, we have 7 shares left. Okay, so we started with 10 over here. Okay, we sold 3 for taxes. Okay, so those went away. Now we have 7 shares left, okay? 7 shares to work with. Oftentimes the question is, what should I do with them? So we're going to use a common approach, which is going to hedge our bets, so to speak. With those 7 shares, we are going to take a 50-50 approach, okay? We are going to keep 3.5 shares, in this example, half of them, and we are going to sell 3.5 shares, okay? Now, we're doing this, like I said earlier, to hedge, okay? Most clients I work with think that their stock is the cat's meow, okay? Meaning, this stock is going to the moon. I work here, I know the people here, we're doing great things, we're changing the world, I don't wanna sell. My role as your advisor is to remind you of companies that also were going to the moon. Have we heard of Enron? Have we heard of Lehman Brothers? Have we heard of the dot-com bubble? Have we heard of the great financial crisis? There could be things that happen that have nothing to do with you, the fellow employees that you work with, or the leadership of the company. There could be an outside event that completely surprises and decimates the company, but more specifically, the value of the stock in the company. And I cannot, in good faith as a fiduciary, have you accumulate shares and be exposed to an event like that. So a common approach is to split the difference. You want to hold shares, is a common thing I hear from clients. So keep 3.5 in this example and sell the other 3.5. We will invest the other 3.5. So in this example, that would be $3,500. We're going to put that into a beautifully diversified, you know what's coming next, portfolio. Okay, we're going to take out the concentration risk inside of those shares, and we're going to put it into a beautifully diversified portfolio that doesn't have the concentration risk of a single company having a poor event in the future that destroys the value, either from internally or externally. However, you'll see that we're going to keep these other 3.5 shares. So that's what I want to talk about here. Those 3.5 shares and their tax treatment is interesting. So let's look at this. Those 3.5 shares, we're going to have $3,500, right? And it's at $1,000 per share. Okay, so keep that, we'll put a pin in that. From this point, from the January 1 vesting date, any appreciation from there, we'll sneak over to here, from there forward is going to be long-term or short-term capital gain or capital loss. So for example, let's say your $1,000 share price goes up. Okay, it goes up to, let's call it $1,500. That gain from 1,000 to 1,500, or yeah, from 1,000 to 1,500, that's a $500 per share capital gain. Okay, so notice we start from the principal or the vested amount. It was 1,000 a share, and now over time we have a positive scenario. You increased in value by $500. So those 3.5 shares, you now have what is it? 1,750 would be the total, 1,750 of capital gain. Now, it's either going to be short-term or long-term capital gain based on how much time has passed from January 1. So if you wait until January 2 of the next year, so a year and a day gets you to long-term capital gain territory. So if you wait until January 2 of the following year, right? So January 2 following, that's going to be a long-term capital gain. So we'd call this LT. If you sell, if you have this gain, this $500 appreciation or whatever it is, if you sell before this January 2 date, it will be a short-term capital gain, and short-term capital gains are subject to ordinary income tax, which could be as much as double the long-term capital gains tax rate. So if we're going to hold the shares, we would want to hold them long-term, okay? Just because of the preferential tax treatment. So it'd be a longer term hold, at least a year. I mean, I wouldn't call that long-term in terms of our financial planning, but for tax purposes, long-term is a year and a day to get you into that long-term classification. The other option is that the price could drop in value. So let's look at that real quick. If the price goes from $1,000 per share and it drops to $500 per share, now you have a $500 capital loss. And we can play around with this as well, right? Depending on your tax situation. If you have, in this example, 3.5 shares, right? This would be a total of $17.50 of capital loss. We might take that capital loss, right? We might say, let's sell the stock, let's take the loss. We can offset any capital gains on your tax return. There could be an opportunity here, even at a loss, to sell the stock, save some money on taxes, because we'd be in that either, again, long term, if it's more than a year, or short term capital loss. So I hope this is helpful for you. Just to recap real quickly, and I'll come back onto the video here. Just to recap real quickly, when you vest, that is a taxable event, like getting a bonus, right? Like getting a commission. That is hitting your pay stub, and it's going to hit your tax return in that year. Nothing we can do about that. Typically, you're under withheld. So we need to withhold more for taxes so you don't get a big tax bill. However, from that point forward, if you hang on to shares there on that vesting date, if you hold shares for a year and a day, right, that becomes a long-term position, and any gain or loss becomes a capital gain or a capital loss, long-term or short-term, and it's based on the value of the stock on the day that you vested. If you're vesting monthly, you're gonna have a lot of these different prices because you'll be vesting at different prices every month or every quarter or whatever the time period is. You're going to have different grant price, or not grant prices, you're gonna have different vest prices as you vest at those different dates. So I hope this was helpful. If you have more questions, you know how to reach me. I'll always have my contact information below on these videos. Please like or subscribe to the channel. That helps more people find the videos. This one will be public facing. Obviously helpful if you're an existing 10 Talents client, but feel free to share the love. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so that you can get notified of helpful videos like this one. I really appreciate you tuning in today and looking forward to getting another video out very soon. Thanks, bye.